and it's more like saving memories and stuff. I think you can probably tell from my background, there's all kinds of stuff going on here. My wife just feels uncomfortable in my office. She's like, this is so much clutter.
And Doug's got a guitar there. I love good Zoom rooms. So I think that's the place to hoard stuff.
I think the key in the end is an awareness that there is a point at which it is junk. Yeah. And to tread that line. Right. I do cull occasionally, and it's usually like I can't remember where that came from, and we're moving or something like that. And I'm like,
culls
this
are
can
great.
Go now if I can't
Culls
even remember where it came from.
Yeah, absolutely. When you pick it up, and I think meaning drains away from objects. Like, it's fresh. We just got back from Italy, and look at it. So and it's fresh. It's full of meaning, and the meaning literally drains out of it. And one day you pick it up 8 years later. It's like, what the hell is this thing? Then it's junk.
Hey everybody, it's the Data Driven Marketer, sponsored by NetWise. I'm Adam.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Doug.
Welcome back for another hang in the data basement. Thanks for joining us, and special thanks to our guest this week, Doug Kessler, who is creative director and co-founder of Velocity Partners. This is the point where I'll just throw to you, Doug, to give us a little bit about your background and how you ended up at Velocity and in marketing, etc.
You're making me do my own intro? Is that what you're saying? All right, lazy guy. I'll do my own intro. So I started I was like an ad guy in junior high. I knew I had to be an ad guy. I was really into advertising. Really weird. I even did a paper on like the use of water in menthol cigarette ads. And it was the coolest project. But so like right out of college, went to Ogilvy, New York, Madison Avenue. It was the whole scene. I loved it. And then kind of got the B2B bug weirdly. I felt a little bit silly doing consumer marketing. I was on Dove and they said, it's a beauty bar. It's not soap. And I just thought, oh, really? I just couldn't really do consumer marketing. And so we had the AT&T account, learned about computers, and like, this is cool. And I became B2B, never looked back, and ended up moving to London and, with Stan Woods started Velocity, which is all B2B tech, and, got in early on the content marketing boom and kind of rode that. And so we've had a really fun ride and now got all sorts of clients that we absolutely love across the piece in B2B tech.
So that was way better than what would have been my mechanical bio read.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah.
Although in the course of the read, I might have been able to refer to I was looking at doing my due diligence before we started chatting, looking at your LinkedIn profile. And I like that your first couple jobs, you just list your position as suit.
Yeah, I was at Ogilvy. I was a suit. I was an account guy, and it was an ill-fitting suit in every sense of the word.
So, what did you find as your main, besides the squishiness of branding in B2C? What was it that really helped you or made you think I need to pivot to the B2B space?
You know what? A part of it was I felt a little bit dirty about manipulating people. I got on a fabric softener account, also Lever Brothers, and it was like the strategy boiled down to be a good mother, use this fabric softener. And I thought, oh man, you're manipulating women who already feel like some sensitivities about whether they're a good mom, and you're going to use that to sell this junk, which you don't even need it. I mean, it's fabric softener. It's so disposable. So I just didn't feel good. Actually, I was a little bit naive. I think I was harsher than I might have been. But I just didn't feel right about it. So I prefer to convince somebody to do something,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we actually talk about it frequently here because it's something that comes up in the data space. I have my own, the company that we work for here that sponsors the podcast ultimately helps with B2B audience targeting. And in the B2B space, I feel way better about the idea of here are the things you can do with the data and that's interesting and the targeting. Because in business, everybody wants to be better at business and they want to grow their business and everybody wants to make money at their job. And, and so it's a very different playing field than the idea of pulling consumer targeting information that starts to get weird and political and sometimes very sketchy if you don't follow the right rules. And, so we are very specifically focused on B2B with our company. So it's very clean in that way. You can keep it compliant, you can follow the rules, and you can feel good about what you're doing and enabling in the data space without the creepiness of what has become the political discourse around tracking and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I never do. I look at all like the Facebook, blow up things, and I never really think that's the same business I'm in. But you're right, in a way, a lot of, we are using data this way. I suppose it's so obviously like I want more relevance. If you're going to advertise to me, I want you to know who I am. I don't want this junk that has nothing to do with me. I guess that applies to my consumer life too, but it's just, were they fair and open about how they got it? That's, I just want that kind of trust.
It's so weird how we have this connotation of marketers and advertisers as like, 1984 Big Brother, we're watching your every move, your every decision, et cetera. Yeah. And then you actually talk to the marketers and we're like, we're all really good, like empathetic, nice creative people, they're like nice. We're like nice, empathetic for the most part and inspiring storytellers. I felt like you had a great piece about work demanding creativity, in the search for meaning, the piece that you wrote, which is really, really cool. Highly recommend folks check that out. We'll link it in the bio, in the show notes. Sorry. And it's just, I find it so fascinating that there's all these, this just weird universe of misinformation, propaganda, all that's attached to data and the controversies that's erupted. But you get behind the scenes and the people that are activating the systems are generally really well intended and want the best outcomes, like you talk about in that piece.
It is funny because I think a lot of us object to what they're doing. They're collecting this data and why they're doing it. It's like, oh, that's all right. Yeah. Advertise to me. That's not so bad. I know once you've got the data, there are some other horrible uses for it. And so clearly we have to be on guard that way. But yeah, what's weird is that I'm long enough in this profession that the equivalent for me when I got into advertising was psychology. That was this big dark thing. Like they're using psychology. It was there was a book called The Hidden Persuaders. It was really big. And it was like, they're intentionally using psychology to make us buy things. It was this big uproar. I read the book and I'm thinking, of course they're using psychology. Why wouldn't anyone use psychology? It was just such a silly
it's like academic. Otherwise, we're either talking about it or we're doing something with it, and people get mad when you do something with it. And like, oh, you've got all this information, my psychographics, my this and that, my whole cookie trail. And we're like, wait, in a way that's good. In a way that makes the ad experience more relevant. But it does have that dark potential underbelly that we're always suspicious of.
It's also just not any different than things like one of my, not to immediately jump down too deep a philosophical rabbit hole, but it's kind of what we're really here for. It's not any different than what you do in person, right? But when we move into the digital sphere and we can quantify things, everything feels weird. But, if I meet somebody at a networking event, I make a bunch of instant judgments to try to talk about whatever. And the reason people like graphic t-shirts is because it keeps me from having to make a judgment. I can just immediately go, Springsteen, huh? Like, and now we got a thing, and it's like, I didn't have to track you. You told me, but now we have a thing we can talk about. And, and then it turns into the stories. And especially if you're at a networking event, it becomes the story of why we should connect professionally, and everybody's happy.
I mean, you go into a shop.
You just tracked my interest in Bruce Springsteen by looking at my shirt. Gross.
That's right. Exactly. You go into your local shop, and if he forgets you and doesn't know, it's, hey, Doug, how's it going? And knows what you want to buy. Like, you expect that. And I think the data world has
the usual. Give me the usual, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's like, we haven't made the case back in the world. It's like, first of all, it's not your fucking data. You're on my website. It's my fucking data. Like, you visited here, and it's my job to figure out what you want. That's what I do here. And I know there are plenty of moral lines that are crossed along the way, but some of this is like, come on, grow up. This is how business works.
Well, you're allowed to guess, but you're allowed to guess and be right, but you're not allowed to use tools that would help you. It makes
That's
it feel
right.
like
And you
casino
also,
rules or something.
yeah, you're not
You
supposed
know?
to be wrong either. Like people aren't going to like the post cookie era before they solve it. When all the ads are utterly irrelevant. It's like, why are you showing me dog food? I don't have a dog. Like that will annoy people. People will remember
Right.
what blind marketing was like.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you get. I'm searching for men's leather jacket, and I'm getting red women's shoes. It's like, okay, I'm in the clothing space. Yeah, you're right. I'm in market for clothing, but I want you to do better. I think you can do
Yeah.
better.
Well, that's the
The
funny
thing that
thing is because in the early days, it was like I looked at a blue dress and now it all shows me the blue dresses following me around the internet. And even my mom knows how that works now. And now
Yeah.
it's like, why aren't you showing me the blue dress?
yeah, it's funny watching, like generation to generation. I remember there was a period where with my parents, they were totally comfortable with the idea that our address was in the white pages, but they were creeped out by Google Maps.
Right.
Right. And I think of that constantly as generation after generation. I think, I have my youngest sister is 11 years younger than me. And when I ask her about issues of tracking and stuff, she is closer to expecting what I think is kind of like the marketing utopia that we talk about on the podcast sometimes, which is ultimately I only ever have to see things that I would be interested in when I would be interested in them. And that's it. I don't have to, have the experience of watching the next generation reruns and, sort of being subjected to all of these geriatric pharmaceutical ads that, hey, somebody out there needs that stuff, but I'm not there yet. And they don't know that. So it's almost funny when you sit there and go, who do they think is watching this right
It's
now?
almost
Yeah,
like it's like the eye in the
Based
sky
on
syndrome.
what data? Yeah.
Right. It's always that. And it's funny that people are worried about the things they generally shouldn't be and are not at all worried about the things they should be panicking about. But I mean, I don't want to give marketers a free pass. There's been some bad stuff and some, just sleazy stuff that's unnecessarily sleazy with data. And, marketers have ruined it for people by doing that. So like really, if we'd all been straight, had integrity from the start, we'd probably been a better place.
Yeah. So if
And
you're
it's usually
knock it
probably
off.
a small percentage. As with any community, I find it's that 5% of assholes that are just a part of any, and we can cuss on here,
Yeah.
I think.
Sure.
But you're going to have any good thing. Whether it's like, a sports team, you're going to have a bad apple in the bunch. It's like, there's going to be somebody who's just more in it for themselves and less in it for the team, and I think you find that across industries, across,
Wikipedia. I mean,
Right.
Wikipedia is a great example of a place in the digital sphere where if you get the percentages right, you can keep the general pool clean, but you need that offset. You need to offset the 5% nefarious. You need the at least 25% engaged in squashing the nefarious.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. The funny thing is, it's not even usually not so much black hats and white hats and bad guys and good guys. It's like a lot. This is all evolving. Like this is new, and so where the lines are isn't always that clear. And we've had clients say to us like, and we say, well, where do you get that data? And like, oh, I just scrape it off Facebook. It's really cool. Like they don't know. No, you can't do that. Or, so it's still early days. And so it's not like there's a clear moral line. We're all trying to find it. And for the most part, everybody knows this thing runs on trust. We really don't want to betray that trust. You're right. There are the jerks out there who don't care, hit and run. But most brands have something to lose and they want to get it right.
Yeah, they do. And I feel like a lot of that, now we're in such a, there's so many niches, there's so many specialized ways to attack the storytelling. Now you've got your agencies, there's kind of like blockers put in place to make sure, okay, these, the budgets are being run properly. You've got your agency managers who are checking out privacy and all of the different, components of targeting and addressability in your storytelling. I think that it's easy to get kind of swallowed up in the nefarious behavior out there and kind of lose sight of all the good content marketing and the good data collection that's going out there and helping people, succeed in delivering and delivering great experiences, great customer experiences, or great products.
Yeah, at some point it's like it's professionalism. It's like data isn't, I think of data, it's not numbers. It's like, this is people talking to you. They're telling you what they want. They're telling you what they like. And it's like malpractice not to listen, and to reflect what you learned in your subsequent activities. It just feels like basic professionalism to me.
It's a thing that's actually come up with a number of our guests, that idea of like, if I could plaster on the wall in the office, it would just be, data is people, right?
Yeah.
Remembering that, like, it's easy to look at those analytics dashboards and stuff and forget that ultimately that data is, whether explicit or implicit, it's people implying, like, it's people telling you what they want, or how they feel about your brand, or, all that kind of stuff. And so, that really ties together the whole idea that, we call, the podcast is called The Data-Driven Marketer, but that almost feels like a sneaky way to pull in the people that we're trying to remind of that humanity, because what we end up talking about, and most interested in talking about here, is the aspect of what it really is the collision of that data science and software, and the part of marketing that you just can never squash out. It's kind of the equivalent of where engineering hits product, and you have that thing of the user experience people are always there with the engineers clashing, and the engineers are saying, well, the easiest way to do it would be this. And the UX people are going, yeah, but that's a crap way to do it, and people won't like it. And it's kind of the marketing and data science. It's the same thing. Like, we have all kinds of interesting tools, but ultimately we're still trying to tell this human story. And so you can learn things from the tools and you can have that guide your story, but you still end up with this, thing at the end where you can't hire it completely for data. You've got to go back to the storytelling element and find the things that resonate on a human level with people. And that's not always mechanical, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes a lot of the data tools are about optimizing. Like, you start from a starting point and you get better and better and better. But it's like, well, what's that starting point? Like, you can't optimize from the ground up. You got to have an idea somewhere. You got to have this thought. And, so there surely still has to be this sense of empathy in it somewhere. I sometimes think some marketing ops flows are like, content is this colorless, odorless liquid you pour into the machine and it'll work, but it's actually, they don't move from this logic node in the nurture flow to that one unless you do something to them, like unless you talk to them and make them listen and change their mind. And, otherwise they're staying right there. It's going to bounce off. And so I always think it's a bit like multiplication. Like, you got to have the great plumbing, but it's times great persuading is these great results. Mm-hmm. And if either one of those is zero, the result's going to be zero too.
Yeah, there's a great, I don't know if you've read Robert Cialdini's book, Persuasion, right? Yeah. He talks about the Hare Krishnas at the airport. It's like they give you the little flower, and there's this.
Yeah, that's right.
There's this, it's a sort of like expected reciprocity that, okay, you've given me this tiny little flower. Now I need to sit and engage with you in conversation, right? And
you give me a flower, I give you the rest of my life.
Right.
Definitely had a few of those conversations.
And so we kind of think about, it's like, I'm volunteering in a way. The fact that I'm sharing with you my personality, my taste in music, my taste in art, my taste in photography. These are all things I'm volunteering to the internet, and we kind of have the same now expectation of, if you're going to advertise to me, then I want you to reflect. Show me a mirror. Hold a mirror up to my behaviors, and tell me the story of your product through the lens that I've given you. I feel like that's,
it's first party data we all probably feel comfortable with. It's like, I'm on your site, and Spotify's great for me because it knows me. And, I expect that. It's the third party stuff that starts getting people creeped out. And I have seen some models where it's like, I'm the consumer. I will hold my data and I will release it to you as an as needed basis, but almost like, I'll say if I want this website to know stuff about me and what it wants to know. And I like that idea of that control shifting. And, I think that's got to happen really, because at some point, the balance has to be struck.
So is that flower content marketing? Not to divert too hard from the previous point.
But in the early days, it was. I think in the early days when content marketing was new, it was like this massive advantage. Like, wait, you're giving me this ebook, man, just for me? It's like, wow, and it's like, wow, it's full of advice and it's good for making my job better. I like you, I'll give you my time. And over time, I guess we're talking about, marketers ruin everything. And in this way, content marketing, now it looks more like an ad transaction often, which is it's just an ad in other clothes. But those who do it right, great content brands, yeah, it is that flower. It's kind of like, here, I want to help you. I'm going to add value here. If you like that flower, it's not just the sentiment behind it, but if it's that helps you out, then you'll give me some more time. You earn it.
Well, it's funny that we're here doing a sponsored podcast because ultimately, I frequently think of the idea of the Ovaltine radio hour or whatever it was, right? Like all of TV, everyone is really familiar with content marketing. In a sense, that's all of broadcast everything because, until you evolve to the product placement aspect of things, we're really just trying to make some stuff so that people will buy ad time on our network, right?
Right.
It's just evolved in that space where everyone has the capacity to make that stuff now, to publish books that look just as good as the books from the fancy publishers, to make podcasts that sound like radio shows, videos, et cetera. And so, there's this emergent thing, but same thing. I feel like I'm saying often, it's not really anything different, but I'm curious from your perspective, living, sort of living and working through that evolution, is there a distinction for you that's clear between, I guess, content marketing and marketing content? Maybe would be the way to say it.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, in a way, content marketing has dissolved into the mainstream of B2B marketing for sure. It's just like, imagine content-free marketing. It just doesn't stack up. But and for the beginning of content marketing, there was this kind of apartheid of like, we're not promotional. We are, helpful. And that's what this is. And if you're going to promote, you're an ad and you sit over there and it's not part of this. Well, I feel like, look, if you believe in your products and services, an ad is also a help to your audience. You're telling them something they ought to know. It's a continuum. And, the amount of promotional content in any content, you dial up, you dial down, but it's the same thing. We're still in the same thing. And if your ads aren't helping someone do their job and you don't believe in your products, well, you got bigger problems than the line between content and promotion. For me, if you really believe in your stuff, it's all fair game as long as, it works.
It's really interesting. I think that's a great way to segue one of your, this piece that I really loved is about searching for meaning in marketing, and you talked about your journey from a very large ad agency to starting your own company. And I think, probably the autonomy, if I were to intuit, you probably enjoy a lot more autonomy now, but you probably have, you're trading that off for headaches in a different direction. But it's interesting, the search for meaning in a field of ostensibly widgets. You've got all these different products. A product is a product. To some people, a product is a lifestyle or a solution or kind of a miracle for other people. And for me, the thing I always enjoyed, I started off in this marketing journey in SEO, and the competition aspect really always kind of gets me going. I'm a sports guy. I love, outranking a competitor, beating them in search, things like that. For B2B, it's a little different. There's certainly rankings to conquer and auctions and all that fun stuff, but it's less about, I feel like it's less about cannibalizing someone else's opportunity and kind of really creating a sense of placement, like finding, hey, how can we work together to achieve shared goals? It's not about, I don't know, maybe that's not the right way to think about it, but
it's not a zero sum. I know what you mean. I mean, in some markets, it is cutthroat zero sum. I'm going to win, you're going to lose. In a lot of art clients, they're inventing something new. So they're selling a new way of doing something. And it's less about head to head, competition with someone doing the exact same thing. It's often about, a substitute, the way you're doing it now. It's status quo tends to be, and inertia tend to be the big obstacles. And for a lot of our clients, some know they're in a knife fight on the street with one other vendor or two, but a lot of them, it's much more evangelize something to break the inertia and make people want to, change and do something differently.
Well, and that, it's one of the principle that always has served me the best throughout my career, and the evolution of all of this stuff is the algorithms and all that kind of stuff. When you talk about SEO, like, sure, there are optimizations that you can apply, but in the end, they're still just trying to find the best answer for the query that somebody put into a search engine, and providing the best answer in the most friendly format. Just making good content has never gone away as the thing that will actually win and be evergreen, because the algorithm is still going to be solving for good content. And it's really one of the things that Mark and I connected on early on. And Mark has gone further down the rabbit hole on the technical side, but we still sort of come back to the same thing, which is, if you just make good content, all the rest of it kind of doesn't matter, and I think I can think of a lot of really specific use cases, things like that first Dollar Shave Club ad that really knocked it out of the park. Like, that made that whole company, and all they were doing was standing out because they had a creative ad that was, easy to make for the, creative founders. Or then I think about like all the Nike Spike Lee ads and stuff, like Nike is one of the first brands that I was very aware of that was very clearly not selling the shoes. Right. It was just sort of like, the shoes are there and stuff is happening, but then people end up talking about the ads because the stuff is compelling enough.
It's and cool factor.
Right. And that ends up punching through all the other competitors who were there going, our shoes help you jump the highest.
I know, I can't believe how, it's so clear when you see that some real mojo and proper brand just leaps out in B2B. It's just like in Nike's world, like most consumer brand, they kind of get this, whether they're good at it or not, it's another thing, but they're in that game. Whereas in B2B, they don't yet. A lot of brands don't know they're in that game. It's like, and they'll think, oh, well, Nike can do that because they're Nike. It's like, no, they're Nike because they did that. That's what made them Nike. And you can be the Nike of supply chain management or whatever it is. If you just want to like stand up and believe in something instead of, hammering home your features, and just plain mojo can leap out of B2B markets because it's, people converge on the conventions of B2B so fast. It's like, let's all talk like this in any given market. And so anyone who says, no, I don't want to talk like that will really stand out.
I love that. A lot of that goes to, I keep coming back to enchantment. Guy Kawasaki talks about, don't sell me, but enchant me. And that's, I feel like, this is, and full disclosure, this is my first time working in a purely B2B context. So I come at this with a very, B2C mindset. And so
that's a good really thing. I wish more B2B folks had B2C mindsets. I think we're missing a trick in not getting the emotional side of brand. And, people go too far. The whole Simon Sinek start with why and the kind of meaning of a brand. And people will take that too far. Like, we're saving the world one purchase order at a time. It's like, no, you're not. It's like, so you just took it too far. Like, can't you stand for something that's real? Like if it's about, procurement, it's about waste. We hate waste. We just hate waste everywhere we see it. And that's why we do what we do. That's like, there's some reality there. There's some meaning in mojo and, it's not bullshit. So it's finding that we love. That's what I love with our client work. It's like, what's the real thing going on here? Why does this matter? And if you can tap that, you get all sorts of different kinds of content. It's not just convince all the time. It's also, resonate with people who are like you because they care about the same things. It's a different brief and it's way more fun.
Well, like we've been talking about it, there are humans at the end of that chain, even if it's B2B. Yeah. And so, consumers, you're trying to influence them directly so they buy your product. B2B is like you said, it's this weird sort of game of there are humans there. And you're right. I do think a lot of times we forget about that part and the strength of, well, what's the actual story? Because, you could even have a subpar product, but if people believe in the story and they get on board, and then you get that momentum going. I mean, like you said, the really interesting thing in B2B is how fast you can see the shift of, I think with the internet, consumers are starting to react faster in that way, sort of the shift of culture. It seems like the cycles on every time, Duran Duran gets popular again for like 6 months, it's tightening up. It's faster and faster every cycle. But but in B2B, it's like you said, I think best way to track it is to see how quickly buzz terms start showing up in your webinars and meetings and stuff. It's like somebody says the term synergy and somebody else likes it and suddenly everybody's saying it, now everybody's double clicking on things to drill down, and it's just, you can just browse TikTok endlessly for people making jokes about all the corporate lingo, but it really is an articulation of like the quick flow of memes through, and I mean memes from like a academic standpoint, not, stupid images with text, but like memes, you really can track the flow of memes through a business, scenario and in the data, which ends up really interesting. But then I think people still don't apply that idea of, can we get our version of, money, it's got to be the shoes, and then watch that flow through the B2B, ecosystem. It's still a lot of, can we get people familiar with the idea of inbound marketing? Like,
that's right.
It doesn't matter if you have a cool mascot that everyone recognizes.
Yeah.
Because that could work too.
Exactly.
With your clients, do you find that it's generally them coming to you saying, "Hey, we need to differentiate. We need to clarify our voice. Help us clarify our voice." Or are you the one taking a look and auditing the space, saying, "Guys, you're saying the same thing everybody else is saying. We need you to differentiate"? How does that flow of information typically work?
A lot of our clients come to us for voice and differentiation, and we kind of built the agency on that. Like we do our own marketing in a different way, and the people who resonate with that are like-minded marketers. So we already are going to start in a better place. So a lot are coming saying, "Help us stand out and help us find the voice and clarify the story." And sometimes it's like, "Help us grow." It's not as specific as that, and we would say, part of the problem here is your story's not very clear, and or your voice is like everyone else's, and you've got an opportunity here. So it can go either way, whether they've already identified kind of voice and differentiation, and Mojo, we call it, as the thing missing, or we're the ones to mention Mojo as the big differentiator. And in software markets, they converge quickly around features, and it's harder and harder to really leap out with the product itself. And so Mojo can be a massive differentiator. It can really be the difference, someone who just talks with confidence and attitude and energy, and they love what they're doing and they're a bit playful about it. It's just refreshing. You want to do business with people like that.
Totally.
So as happens with the best episodes of this, I have a bunch of notes left of things that I could have brought up along the way and wanted to, but the conversation didn't go there. So we'll have to have you back for sure.
Okay.
We're almost out of time. The one I do want to hit, though, is to double all the way back to the beginning. What about water and menthol ads?
Yes, yeah. I had that.
I noticed as a kid that menthol cigarettes, back then it was print advertising. You were allowed to advertise cigarettes. And so every magazine was full of cigarette ads. The menthol ones always had men and women in front of water all the time. So clearly they're trying to kind of signal coolness, And I noticed it in one ad, then another, then another. It's like, wait a second. Like, this is a strategy. Like, this is not just like, this is happening. So across brands, and I collected like 30 examples. Took me a lot of time. And I'm still bitter about this. The teacher said, "Good job. Too many examples." Too many examples.
Too much data.
Like, the whole point was, this is not just one brand doing this or once. This is a thing. I still am angry about it. And I never got to have my say. There's like, I got a good grade, but too many examples. What? Flipping is a problem for you or something? Like, come on. I worked hard. Everyone had glassine, like it was in a little slip. Like, it was beautiful.
Yeah, right.
I remember those. Oh, no, those were...
I hadn't thought of it, but I can really clearly imagine all the billboards and print ads and the, just bikini clad women floating in a
splashing
inner tube in a pool. Yeah.
Well, actually, there was a lot of orgasm imagery too, but I didn't go there thinking I'm in junior high, I'm going to get in trouble. But there was a ton of climax and erection cigarette. There was a lot of that going on too.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's like they're putting it's subliminal, and that's the thing I realize is, you're like, oh my, like these are all kind of subliminal emotional appeals, right? Is that to borrow a buzzword that's ubiquitous?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what everyone was alarmed about when I was getting into the business, was like they're hiding messages like sex in these ads. Like, that's not hidden. That's like right out front. Like, that's like looking for obscure references to aquatic mammals in Moby Dick. Like, it's there. Like, it's right in your face. But sometimes there are these little tropes. You think, wait, why is that repeating? Why is that always happening there? And I think you're right. It is quite an intentional subliminal thing.
Well, and the one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up is it also made me think of an early paper in my career of sort of dissecting the stuff that was for an aesthetics class in college, the philosophy of art, basically. And it was the paper I was writing was, trying to dissect the difference between fine art and, say, the graphic design in an ad that you might see. And I was kind of treading on the same topics, which was sort of like, the art is existing sort of for the art's sake, and there's a lot of layers and there, same subliminal stuff, but it's all just for the point of like, here is this art. Whereas the ad and the graphic design is kind of deploying the same things, but like you said, you start seeing these tropes and these memes and these things that are, it's almost a more advanced type of manipulation than just creating fine art where, you go, oh, that's beautiful. And I could look at it for hours because I don't know why. And the ad, it's a little, but then also it creates the space to discount it because you look at it and go, oh, I know what you're up to.
Yeah, I know. Well, nobody said that about like Michelangelo's David. Oh, I know what you're up to. You're just trying to impress me with his strength and power. It's like, like you're making me feel something, but you're not making me feel something. So I buy your stuff like that.
We didn't have the skepticism of the profit motive, in the Renaissance. Right. I think people were.
Yeah, but they had
plagues
too,
to focus on there.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, it was the patronage motive or whatever.
Yeah, they sold that. Like they sold that Medici was a good guy and was going to go to heaven. There was something on sale going on.
That's true. Okay, I'll buy that. You convinced me, Doug. You convinced me.
All right, Mark, I need to know your punk band name in high school or in college. What was the name of the punk band?
You're going to love this. Crash Everest.
Nice. How long did it take you to do that name? Like, was that like a 3-month band argument?
It was our bassist, Chris Jones, who works for Corona. He's brilliant, and he thought of it off the spot. It was
Crash Everest.
Yeah.
It's good.
And then I did most of your graphic design.
Crash Everest into Spotify. Am I going to get any music, or is this still back on cassette tapes or something?
You know what? I will send you. I will mail you a CD.
Oh wow! All right. So it's not on Spotify.
I don't know how proud I am of the graphic design.
That is a promise from me to you, Doug. I will.
All right.
Something. We have thousands that I would, and I would love to. I won't mail you thousands. I promise.
I mean that's another great example of the evolution of this stuff.
On Spotify.
You have thousands because that was probably the minimum print order at the time.
Yeah,
I have so many boxes of T-shirts where it's like I have 250 of these because that's the least I could order.
Yeah, that's why I love digital.
I do too. I mean, if we had Teespring, oh my god, dude, Kurt, can you imagine if the Crash Everest,
so much more
Shopify and Teespring,
so much more
dude?
swag fun? Yeah, totally.
Is there a Crash Everest T-shirt going out there somewhere? Do you have one? You never made a T-shirt.
Did we make a T-shirt?
I don't think it was as advanced as we got. Stuff to give away at gigs.
My brother and I were in bands, and he was in more than me, but all of us spent a lot more time naming the band than practicing, which is why nobody knows any of the bands.
Well, that's why we're here in marketing.
Yeah.
And my wife is the professional musician who's like, I can't keep myself from doing it, but I would rather not. She doesn't care about the names or the whatever. She's like, I just want to make music. Why do I have to do all that shit?
Well, she'll probably make it through because it's, I mean, the Beatles is probably the worst band name in history, and it didn't hold them back.
And all they did was change one letter. And that was the marketing, That's
so naff. but boy, they made it happen.
What part of London are you in? Speaking of the Beatles, where I love London, and
it's in Barnes. It's the southwest.
Okay.
There's a little bulge in the river down here. And there's no tube station in the middle, so it acts like a little village. It's only 6 miles from Piccadilly Circus, but we got the river and the park, and it's really nice out here.
That's awesome. I spent a summer in Regent's Park, stayed at Regent's College.
Cool.
It's a
good city.
Okay, cool. Well, let's land this plane. Thank you so much for joining us, Doug. This was great.
Sure, my pleasure.
Chat.
I enjoyed it.
Like I said, plenty more notes, so we'll have to have you back to dive in further down some of those philosophical, aesthetic rabbit holes, etc.
Sounds great.
Otherwise, thanks also to our listeners. Like, subscribe, whatever buttons exist wherever you're listening to this, because we put it everywhere. And this has been another Data-Driven Marketer, sponsored by NetWise. I'm Adam.
I'm Mark.
I'm Doug.
Take it easy, everybody.